right. Hello, quality people. Just going to give folks another few seconds to get uh, access into the session here, and then we'll get rolling. Okay, I think yeah, we've got a fair number coming in, so we'll go ahead and kick off. Like I say, hey, quality people, welcome to this episode of our quality solutions series. I want to thank you all for joining today. We're looking forward to talking to you about creating closed loop processes that set you up for success with your continuous quality improvement objectives. It takes a lot of work for organizations to put quality at the center of their world and keep it there. It takes holistic, big picture thinking to map those connections across people, process, tools, and data. And it can be a challenge to get everyone on board with that, but it's a worthy challenge. And we're going to arm you today with some information and food for thought as you advance in your quality journey. Next slide, please, Tom. So my name is Angela Anderson. I'm Product Marketing Manager for ETQ, and I'm joined today by my esteemed colleague, Tom Barlow, ETQ Quality Expert and Strategic Solutions Engineer. So first, I'm going to just set the stage for us by introducing what we mean by closed loop quality processes. Then Tom's going to orient you to the ETQ Reliance platform and provide a live demo. And then after that, I'll be back to share a couple of ETQ customer stories, and then we're going to bring it home together with our live Q&A at the end. Next slide, Tom. As always, we'll send a link to the recording to all of you registrants, and be sure to use that question box in the GoToWebinar panel to ask questions or share your thoughts during the presentation. And like I say, we'll save room at the end for that Q&A. Next slide. All right, so what is closed loop quality? Well, we could start the definition from kind of an opposite point of view, maybe calling it no loop quality. Siloed data, disconnected processes and systems, those stand in the way of effectively aligning quality with business goals and objectives. Next slide, Tom. And the challenges are common across so many organizations. Inconsistent processes that destroy productivity and create friction. And I know all the Lean Six Sigma people out there know that where there's friction, there's waste. Disconnected systems and lack of harmonization creates that duplicate work and more wasted resources. And now more than ever, organizations rely on suppliers to provide so much of their value stream, and lack of visibility into supplier quality is a huge risk. Next slide. As quality professionals, we know quality touches the entire product lifecycle. Issues can arise basically at any point. However, there are opportunities at each phase to address the challenges that we just looked at. There's a competitive advantage to be had in breaking down the silos and taking full advantage of continuous improvement through closed loop processes that, for example, allow you to connect customer feedback with future product development, allow you to track and trend supplier corrective actions for more informed procurement decisions, or allow you to quickly identify and correct manufacturing issues before a defective product reaches a customer. So now that we're warmed up a bit on closed loop quality processes, I'll hand you over to Tom for a deeper dive into the ETQ platform and a demonstration of the ways that you can build closed loop quality processes that provide exponential value, not exponential waste. So with that, Tom.
Thank you, Angela. So let's talk a little bit about ETQ Reliance NXG. Reliance NXG is the next generation of quality management system. It's a portfolio of about 42 pre-configured applications that sit on one extremely agile configurable platform that's hosted in the Amazon Web Services cloud. It's extremely easy to access, it's extremely intuitive, and there's minimal maintenance on your side because the system is supported in the Amazon Web Services cloud. We've worked with many industries over the years, many customers around the world, and it's very impactful. We find that with NXG, we have more engaged users. You'll find more productive users, more knowledgeable. It's ROI is really the language of your organization and of your management. So if you can implement a system that's going to show that you can achieve a higher return on investment and save a lot of money, then of course it's going to make it sense to implement a system like this. You can drive digital transformation because the system has the flexibility to adapt. As I mentioned earlier, it's extremely flexible, gives you the visibility. It's one global platform that has connectivity across the different applications, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, as well as the ability to integrate with external systems to achieve automation. So what you're doing is through automation, you're achieving digital transformation. In addition, the system is future-proof in several different ways. One, because it's in a cloud-native technology, we're always using the latest and greatest technology in the system and leveraging that across our platform. But also, from a process perspective, because it's so highly configurable, and when I say configurable, your non-technical administrators have the ability to configure the system without programming. It's going to allow you to meet any needs that are changing moving forward. So you'll never be stuck with something that you wish you could do because our platform is configurable enough to allow you to do it. As we continue to develop our system, our NXG, our next generation QMS, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we focus on these 4 pillars. Usability, we're always looking to make the systems easier to use, require less effort to get from one thing to another. The user interface, user experience is designed specifically for that. We've already talked about flexibility, the agility to configure the system to meet your own business process requirements. We want to increase visibility. So we have an analytics tool called ETQ Insights for advanced analytics to allow you to not just do reports, but analytics and report and analysis and take information to the next level. And then, of course, scalability across the organization, regardless of the size of your organization. Our system can support very large global enterprises across the world with harmonization, where you can share common elements across the processes. You can have governance of the overall process, but still allow for individuality. Oftentimes, it's the standardization that most other systems require is what makes it difficult to implement global systems, and that's why people end up with silos. So with Reliance, you can have a globalized, harmonized platform across your entire enterprise. ETQ Reliance, as I mentioned, is a platform. It has 42 pre-configured applications. This is just a high-level look at the core applications, which is what you would start with the implementation of our system. You would, as you can imagine, the sort of the standard staples of processes in the QMS or any compliance management system, docs, document management, training, audits, corrective action, change management, and a few other utilities that are included as well, including the Insights tool, which is the analytics. And then we also package it in what we call application sets. So these are optional application sets or individual applications in the case of the bottom 2 on the right. These other application sets have an average of about 4 applications per set. So those are 4 additional applications that come with them. They all look and feel the same. The beauty of the platform is that it's extremely intuitive. Once you learn how to use 1 or 2 processes, all the other processes, although the information may be different within the process and the form may be different, the workflow may be different, it looks and feels exactly the same. So it's extremely intuitive. So that's the system. And I just want to mention very quickly before I jump into the overview of the closed loop process that we'd like to discuss today. The system itself has these 6 platform genetics. They're really infused across all the applications, whether they're applications that are pre-configured. So as I mentioned, we pre-configure the system with these 42 applications, including in these application sets. We use our own configuration tool called the ETQ Designer to do those configurations. So even though we have our development team making these apps, we have pre-documented specs from the past 30 years or so of working with customers for what best practices look like based on their processes. So we use our own designer tool to pre-configure and then package the applications as you see listed here. But then you as a non-technical administrator that works on the quality side of the organization that understands the business requirements better than perhaps your IT department can, you have the capability of using our drag and drop tool to configure either existing apps to extend the configuration, to tweak it to meet your own business process requirements. So once again, the whole idea of future-proof and agility. But you can also use the platform as a development tool to build new applications. And the beauty of those configurations that you do, whether they're extending an existing application or building a new application, is that we cannot functionally differentiate the difference between what we pre-configured versus what you configured as part of the implementation, because we use the same tool to pre-configure that you would use. So that's really powerful. We've never seen another tool that's as powerful as that, that allows you to leverage the whole concept of the platform approach. These genetics now, as I just introduced a second ago, are really infused across all those apps. So before we get into the process in question, I'd like to just discuss these for a moment. Adaptability has already been discussed. Complete configuration capability, connectivity between processes, and you'll see this in our closed loop story. You might have an issue, and then from that issue, we could launch an investigation, and from that, we could launch a corrective action, and then multiple other things. So connectivity is the ability to have processes that are interacting with each other. You can launch one from another with inheritance of information, so it automates the process and provides full traceability between related records. In addition, we understand that our system does have a lot of things going on and a lot of different applications are on it, but you also have existing systems that have information that's integral to our system's functioning. So ERP systems, CRM, customer relationship management, PDM or PLM systems, learning management systems, Active Directory and LDAP for users and employees. This information is crucial to our system, and it's more importantly being managed by most likely someone else within your organization. So with integration, we can leverage that information. We can either pull the information in or use it, like supplier lists or customers or products, when we're dealing with issues that we want to track against certain categories like product or customer or supplier. Or we can even trigger information to be exchanged back and forth by triggering new records back and forth between something like an ERP and our nonconformance process, for example. So that's a very powerful platform capability. The other thing that makes it successful of implementing across a large organization is what we call contextual awareness. That means that you can set up your own organizational structure in our system, and we have some customers that have tens of thousands of users with 50, 60, 80 locations across the world in different countries. Once you set up that hierarchy, there's a field called location that exists on every form in the entire system, whether it exists now as pre-configured by us or any new forms or applications that you configure with that same field option. And when someone logs into the system, they also have that same location field on their user profile. So the system knows where they are within the organization. And you could choose to dynamically filter information in the system so that when someone logs in from the New York location, they can look at a list of corrective actions for New York and not see anybody else's if you don't want them to. Somebody from Los Angeles logs in, looks at the same view or the same application to look at that information, and the system only shows them the Los Angeles information and they can't see New York's. So it's the same interface, it's the same, most importantly, the same configuration, dynamically filtering, but the manager of both the New York and the Los Angeles locations that are above them on the hierarchy can open the system and log into the same application and open it up and look at it, and they would see everybody's information from both of those locations. So that kind of contextual awareness gives us the ability to harmonize. You can still have the same processes being utilized across the organization, but then based upon users' privileges, based on their location, for example, they may or may not be able to see each other's information. That same capability lends itself to the next platform genetic called external collaboration. External users like contractors and suppliers, you can now allow to interact with any business process in the system. So a typical example might be the supplier corrective action process. Someone launches a supplier corrective action, and instead of having to manually communicate with your supplier, you can send them the record using workflow. So our system would automatically send an assignment email to the external user, like the supplier, with a hyperlink to the record. They would have a home page that shows listed activities that they have to complete. And then our escalation management tool tracks upcoming due dates, can start to send reminders to the supplier. And imagine the time savings and efficiency you can gain from that by not having to manually follow up on your own suppliers. So that same hierarchy can be extended to external locations like supplier names or contractor names. So when the supplier logs in, the user profile for that supplier knows the supplier that they belong to, and any records in any application can be automatically filtered based on the records that belong to that supplier as well. And then finally, anywhere access means that you can access the sister system from anywhere. We support the browsers on your tablets, such as Firefox and Chrome. So if you're on your in your facility somewhere or out somewhere using your broadband connection to the internet, you can still log into the same web interface. We have responsive design, so the system automatically adjusts the forms that you have access to. Things like audits or issue tracking in some cases, it makes it extremely easy to use the tablet just because of the portability. You can also take advantage of the voice to text and the ability to take pictures and then attach them to records automatically. And then on top of that, the browser capability, we have another companion application called the mobility app, the ETQ Reliance mobile app, which you can download for Apple or Android devices, and then literally use that to access the system, whether you're online, but also now that it's a separate app and it functions as a separate app, you can use it offline. So if you're going to go someplace and conduct a supplier audit or whatever it might be, you can capture the information offline and then upload it to the web when you're done. So those are the 6 genetics, and it took me a couple of minutes to describe that, but it's really crucial to understanding the power of our system and the ability to support very large enterprise level organizations, but we can just as easily support very small organizations as well, and you can choose to take advantage of some of those capabilities in the system. So this is an overview of the process for closed loop quality. And I just noticed that my camera went a little haywire, so I'm just going to pause and come back here. Here we go. So let's just take a moment to describe this. And what we're really looking at when you're talking about closed loop quality, you're really talking about the ability to connect traditionally disparate processes in a more holistic way, in a more holistic QMS, whether you're talking about process or product or whatever it might be. So this diagram will sort of highlight that and how we envision it and how we've implemented it within our system. And then what I thought I might do after this brief discussion is I will go in and actually show it to you within the system. So you can have inputs from customer complaints, and I talked earlier about integration from external systems or with external systems. So in this case, we have a call center that you might already be using, something like Salesforce or another CRM tool. And then when that complaint comes into that system, the integration could trigger a new customer complaint or customer feedback record within ETQ Reliance. So the idea here is that nobody is manually creating a new record in our system, but the integration is doing it for you. And then with the workflow, it would be pre-configured to know who gets assigned to the investigation of that issue. So somebody could be sitting at their desk and then just receive an assignment email from the system to this issue with a hyperlink back to it. From there, I talked about connectivity. Because we've identified the issue, we've identified the one or more products related to it, maybe we want to launch a material return, which we can also do within our system so that we know that this product is going to come back. But then we can also click another button and launch a non-conformance report. So it would inherit the details from the source record into this target record, as we call it, which in this case is the new record that got generated. The product information, the description of the problem, the defect code, any other details that need to be shared would be inherited, and then this nonconformance would go through its own process for disposition of what has to happen when that product comes back from the customer. So that's one possible path. So what we're really going to see over the next few moments is several different inputs into the quality management system from an issues perspective. The other input might be from your process, whether you're delivering services or making products. You can identify a nonconformance, and through an integration, if you were using an MES system or manufacturing execution system, for example, or ERP, you could be doing the inspection in that system. And then when something is out of spec, it could trigger a nonconformance through an integration automatically within our system. And that would have its own workflow for disposition of the nonconformance, et cetera, et cetera. From there, using connectivity once again, you could launch a supplier corrective action. So this is now potentially 3 different records related to the same issue in our system, but with connectivity, they're all related to each other, and it's also the creation of them were all automated because of the fact that it inherited details from the source. We're not having to re-enter things. We don't have a silo of a separate SCAR process and a separate nonconformance process. We have everything in one harmonized global platform that handles all these different processes. And I just discussed a few moments ago the ability to have external collaboration. So if you determine, let's say the customer complains and says there's a problem, you launch a nonconformance and you determine that the supplier was at fault, which caused this nonconformance to occur or at least contributed to it, you could click a button, launch a supplier corrective action. That has its own workflow that you can use external collaboration to send to your external supplier. So your supplier would get an assignment email from our system with a hyperlink. They would then have to do with what it was that they were asked to do. And then when they're finished, they could update the record, root cause, description, all this other good stuff, any attachments that you want to, that they want to share. Then they can click another button and then workflow would then send it to somebody else internal to your organization to review and verify that particular supplier corrective action. So that's one possible path. Another possible mechanism to identify an issue is an audit. So as you can imagine, auditing is very fundamental to any quality management system, which is why the audits management application is one of our core applications in our system. You can plan, conduct audits. Ultimately, when an issue is identified, you can click a button. And the reason that this quality event shows up with 3 different arrows from 3 different sources is that's the whole idea. These are just different inputs into the QMS of a way of tracking an issue. And then instead of just going right into a full corrective action, we have a relatively new application called Quality Events that allows you to investigate the issue. So we can get more eyes on it. You can do a risk assessment. You can do an investigation. We actually have investigation planning where you can define different investigation activities that have to be assigned to different people. They can do that. If necessary, you can determine if it has to be just tracked and trended. So in other words, we've done a little bit more of an investigation from the source based on the source record. We've determined that it doesn't need a full corrective action. So we have the terminology we use, but it could certainly be changed. We call it track and trend. So if we want to track and trend something, that means it's not going to go through root cause analysis. It's not going to go into a corrective action. It's just going to get approved and closed. So what you've really done is you've saved your organization all the time and resources it takes to do a full corrective action by using this quality event / investigations application. However, if it was worthy of a corrective action, you could click another button, it would launch a corrective action. It could inherit the root cause information from the quality event into the corrective action. And then you could do action planning to essentially solve the problem permanently. And this is where what happens next is really when we start to see the fruits of a closed loop quality management system. Because not only do we have connectivity between any of these issues and the investigation and the corrective action, but then the response to it is where we really have a feedback loop set up and the power of the connected quality management system through the closed loop process. Because we might propose actions in the corrective action to review and revise documents that might need to be changed because there was an issue that caused the problem in the first place with one of the documents or several of the documents. We also may need to make sure that training is done against those documents. And within our system, we have a very tight connection between document control and training, where you can identify for any document that training has to be done. It sets up a training course, you define who it applies to, and then you can make sure that that training gets completed. Each of these this was triggered perhaps as one of the actions in a corrective action. The training could be triggered from each document, but then you could also have an action item in the action plan to verify that that training was done. And what's happening, and you'll see this in a few moments, not only do we have actions to do this, but we have links to the objective evidence of the fact that it was actually done. So if there were 3 documents that were actually revised, we have links to those 3 actual documents from the document action, the review document action in the corrective action record, which then has a link back to the corrective action, which then has a link back to the quality event and then has a link back to the source. So when we talk about the holistic approach and the closed loop approach, we have the traceability from the initiation of the process all the way through to the resolution, all the way through to the individual objective evidence records of what were modified perhaps as a result of that particular corrective action. The whole idea is to make sure that employees are trained, that they can carry out their processes and are qualified to do so. So what I'm going to do in just a second is I'm going to show an assignment email in our system, what it looks like when someone gets assigned something using workflow, which is linked into a corrective action. And that corrective action came from an audit finding. And that corrective action is also going to have an action plan that's already been set up and in the process of being implemented. And then from there, we'll just see where it goes and we'll keep our eye on the time. So Angela, let me ask you this: how much time would you like me to take on this?
Oh, let's say up to 10 minutes, maybe.
Okay, that
I
should
think
be
we'll be fine. Yeah, 5
no
or 10 minutes. Okay.
yeah, no problem at all. So I'm just gonna pull this up right here. So this is an example of what an assignment email looks like from our system. As I mentioned, all the apps look and feel the same. So depending on the process, it would indicate a different process that I was assigned to. It tells me the current step of the process that it's in. We call it a phase. The due date, you can configure this to include any details from the source record, such as just a summary of the problem. And then there's a hyperlink. So this one is an audit finding. So this was the audit question that became the summary of the corrective action problem. And this hyperlink will bring me to the record in question. So we support single sign-on. So if that was implemented, when I click on this link, it would bring me right to the record that I was just assigned to. And I just did that right here. So this is now a corrective action record in our system. We have workflow at the top. So these are the process steps that it's going to go through. This is the current step, which is indicated by the blue circle. It's blue because it's due in the future. If it was due in the past, it would be red. You may see some other sample records that are in here since it's a demo data set that are overdue. I can see who it's assigned to. From a communication perspective, it shows me the last comment and who made that comment and when. So this tells me what I have to do or what that person did with the record. So instead of having to send a separate email, it's all taken care of. We also have the record itself. So all of our forms have different sections on them with different fields on them. Navigation of the form is extremely easy because we have a navigator on the left side. So it doesn't matter what the form looks like. It's all going to have, well, it doesn't matter what the form is because it's always going to look like this. There's a navigator on the left. We have the action plan, etc. So what's really important, I'm not going to go into every single field. This particular corrective action was launched right from an audit finding. So this one did not go to a quality event first. So for whatever reason, this particular process decided that we had to go right into a corrective action right from the audit finding. So this link is back to the audit checklist that the finding came from. The system automatically inherited the details from the source. So the subject and the description of the problem, that was actually the auditor's comment in the audit's application. It automatically got launched into this record in the initiate step of the workflow. So this record has gone through several steps already. And since we're talking closed loop quality, this is the step we really need to be in to be able to show the linkages to the action items that are related to it. But it went through an approval step. Once it got approved, and by the way, approval infers that it doesn't always get approved, right? So it could be rejected. In other words, maybe the approver needs more information. They could send it back to the previous step with comments as to why it needs clarification. So the person that initiated the record would get an assignment email from the system with a hyperlink. It would show up on their homepage. They would go back and make the changes and then send it to approval again. The approver could then choose to move it on to the root cause step, which is where we can do a root cause analysis. We provide several different tools for that, the 5Y, fishbone, etc. We can also propose an action plan. So in this particular case, we have 3 different proposed actions that had to be done. And the reason I say proposed actions is because we haven't actually approved those actions yet, the action plan. The whole idea is that I have the authority to propose actions in this case if I'm doing the root cause analysis, but I can't just trigger those actions without someone overseeing my process and perhaps approving it. So somebody or a group of people would be able to review this action plan. And with an action plan, each action includes what the action is, who it's assigned to, when is it due, And do we need someone else to verify that that action was done? So this is the first action, and we can have as many actions as we need in this particular action plan. Once the plan gets approved and moves to the implementation step, the system triggers child action items, one from each action in the action plan. And as you can imagine, it automatically assigns it to the person or group that was assigned and makes it due on a certain date that was defined. So the system would send 3 separate assignment emails to potentially 3 different people. If I click over here, this brings me back to the home page. So this is what someone might see when they first log into the system. And I'll just simplify what I'm looking at here. So there are going to be folders or just a flat list of assignments based on the number of records that are assigned. Because I have a lot of things assigned, it's broken up into folders. But this is a list of open tasks that I have to complete in all these different processes. So the beauty is, as I mentioned, the platform has the same look and feel. So every assignment's going to have the same look and feel, and it makes it extremely easy for me to track exactly what I've been assigned to. So this is a list of the actions. This is the action that I was just referring to that was generated from that corrective action that I showed a moment ago. So I would have gotten an email to tell me I have to do it with a link, just like the one I showed before. This is a list of all the open actions. Escalation would track the upcoming due date to start sending reminders, not just to me, but maybe I get a notification 3 days before it's due, and I don't do it in another 2 days. Maybe escalation level 2 goes to my manager. And then even a third level of escalation might go to my manager's manager. I can click on it. This is the action itself. Linked back to the corrective action. Remember, full traceability and closed loop corrective action. So we have a link back from the action to the corrective action itself. And then from that, we have a link back to the source, like the nonconformance report, the customer complaint, the audit finding, whatever it might be. And instead of just saying what I did, I can provide objective evidence. So this is really where a lot of organizations struggle, and our system makes it extremely easy to manage, because when people generate artifacts as a result of taking a corrective action, for example, they might generate files and they might put it on SharePoint, or they might put it on their corporate S drive, or worse, on their local hard drive. So they're the person that has access and the only person that has access to that information. So if you're being audited or need to produce it for whatever reason, they're the single point of failure for that particular process because they are not available at the time. So with our system, you have 3 different ways to track objective evidence. You can attach things, you can drag and drop or browse out to your local machine or network and attach any artifacts, any files, anything you need that is generated or objective evidence for that particular action. You can also link to other places, external links to other systems. So SharePoint or your ERP system or your training system or whatever other systems you might have in place. And then the third option, and this is really leveraging the power of the global platform with connectivity, because we can link to, in this case, the document that was actually revised as a result of taking that particular corrective action. So this, notice, the first thing you probably are seeing right now is it looks exactly like the corrective action form. Of course, it's a different process, but it looks exactly the same. Extremely intuitive, extremely easy to train users on how to use because it's intuitive, and because our platform is often configured to meet your own business process requirements. It's very intuitive because it's your process that's just being automated with our system. So this document's going to be revised. The attachment is right here. And then we have links to training. So this is the training management application where we can identify that training is a requirement. We can define who does it apply to. So is it everyone in a certain location in the organization, a certain department, or certain job positions or combination thereof? And then our system would assign those training assignments to different people. So that, Angela, I think from a closed loop perspective, I'm just going to pause there. I think that was enough of a taste. Of course, there's a lot here, but in the short time that we have, I thought it might be appropriate to just show that level of detail.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
That was a great level of detail, I think, and I just really demonstrated every resolution you're making to an audit corrective action, a quality event, a SCAR, all of those resolutions are feeding back into the system and really making it a living system versus a dusty set of binders on the shelf.
Absolutely.
And inside of it is everything you need, either inside the system or linked to the system, everything you need to complete these processes and create those loops.
So Angela, not only have I seen those actual dusty binders in the past, in my past lives, but I've seen those pages slightly yellowed on the edges.
Ooh,
That's how long ago those documents were created in some cases. So
yeah, that's the tree ring of a stale quality management system. How yellow are the edges? Yeah.
absolutely.
Great. All right. Well, let's keep things moving then. I thought at this point, I would like to share with you all a couple of customer stories. If you want to, yeah, thank you, Tom. Um, just to give you some insights on some real world applications of what Tom just demonstrated. So the first customer I want to tell you about is Lumileds. Lumileds is a global lighting solutions company. They began their ETQ journey in 2016, and before Reliance came along, they had literally hundreds of different quality solutions across 24 global facilities, and it was, the typical paper siloed point solutions kind of all over the place. No consistency or data sharing across these, inefficient and manual processes. And as a result, they had no ability to use the quality data to drive those continuous improvement loops. So they just started their journey with very simply with doc control and audits. As Tom mentioned, it's a starting point for a lot of people. However, their kind of initial ROI calculation quickly went out the window because their eyes were open to more areas where a centralized QMS could make an impact for them. And we hear this from so many customers to just start small, and you'll start creating those quicker win. You'll create a quick win that begins to translate into a snowball effect. So with Reliance, Lumileds, they solved that small scope of initial problems and then began connecting more applications, creating that snowball effect where more teams wanted to connect to that centralized system. So I just wanted to share a couple more highlights from their journey. With all of those systems out there in the wild, tool consolidation was key for them, and they needed to reduce just the sheer number of systems in use to enable that global harmonization goal that they had. So they had a very small team to accomplish this. Basically, one person was tasked with the rollout to a global workforce of 6,000 people across a couple of dozen different sites. And as Tom was mentioning, because of those designer tools, this Reliance system, the ease of use, the low code, no code designer tools for creating workflows and configuring workflows, that program lead was able to train a team of super users to develop and deploy workflows for their own areas. So this kind of helped spread out that administrative work and empowered those teams to adopt the platform, take ownership, and realize the benefits of connecting to that larger system. And then, of course, he would leverage ETQ services as he needed, help with some heavier duty things like some of the complex scripting. And at the time, they saved over $500,000 by just doing that development in-house and empowering themselves within the platform. And that, also greatly reduced that all of those siloed QMSs out there. So once that ball was rolling, Lumileds also focused on data sharing and creating more synergy between those application workflows and the related teams. And an example of that was they set it up to connect their failure analysis team to the reliability team to product development. So these teams already kind of worked together, but it was still, kind of siloed their activities. So they set it up so when something failed in the field, it was recorded in Reliance, and the failure analysis team could seamlessly kind of trigger this request to the reliability team for their investigation. And then this connection led to more connections in their product development lifecycle. So back at the beginning when we were talking about, things can happen and they're connected across the product lifecycle. In order to catch more issues up front, product development team now can send requests to the quality team to perform more pre-work analysis and tests before a product gets into the customer's hands. So just one more thing about Lumileds, then we'll move on to the next customer, and it's about their continuous improvement program. So it's a little meta here. So they used to hold an annual quality improvement competition And ironically, it was a very costly effort to bring everyone together in person for this competition. So in Reliance, they created, and I think they called it the 1-point lessons application. So they built their own application to administer this, where anyone could submit a quality improvement idea or plan. So with this continuous improvement application, they standardized the program and made it more practical, and they turned it into what they call kind of a Kaizen of the month competition, complete with this little reward system where the winners could go to a website and shop for their reward on a little online store that they set up. So using Reliance, they made the actual Kaizen program more agile, efficient, and more frequent, going from a yearly in-person event to a monthly event, and reduce that program cost by over $1 million a year. Not to mention all the cumulative cost reductions and margin gains from all those continuous improvements. So the takeaway, I think, from LumaLEDs it's that story of starting small, focus on today, then bake in that continuous improvement as you go along. And the flexibility and adaptability of the Reliance platform allows you to balance that harmonization, broader harmonization, with the needs of the specific sites. All right, so that's a little about LumaLEDs. So hopefully some inspiration there that you can tackle these global programs with small teams with Reliance as your co-pilot, we'll say. So the next quality journey that I want to share with you is Cummins Meritor. And like I say, you might, at this point, you may be asking yourself, how do I even begin to make headway on a project like deploying a global QMS? And I think the team at Cummins Meritor has some good advice that you might find helpful. Over the last 5 years, they've converted 16 processes from manual siloed records to a global software system integrated with other non-quality business systems like their ERP and PLM. So I'm not going to go into the full detail of their journey here today, but I highly recommend watching the recent webinar we did with Lori Morris. She's the tech delivery lead for that program. It's 20 minutes and it's packed full of things for you to consider as you kind of map your journey for setting up these closed loop processes. She talks about how they decided what applications to configure out of the box or build using the design tools, how they set up their user access and security. And Tom talked a lot about that, about filtering based on the user. And also for their supplier portal, I think Tom mentioned that as well, having external parties access your system and be part of that quality journey with you, how they structured their integrations with Oracle ERP, with Windchill, SharePoint, those types of systems to sync things like their supplier profiles and product profiles into ETQ. She calls it a recipe card for building their process mock-ups as they prepare to roll out new processes. And she talks a fair amount about their robust change management program, because all of this people need to be oriented to and kind of buy into the new system and see the value of it. So they had a very robust change management program that drew upon project management protocols, agile rituals to manage their gates and sprints and demos, and treating it like a formal program rollout. So I hope you will, the link is there on the slide, so I hope you have some time to take 20 minutes, maybe tomorrow over lunch, to learn more about the Cummins Meritor story. All right, Tom. Okay, so with that, so no matter where you are in your quality journey, ETQ can help. So from calculating the ROI for your business case, mapping out your deployment strategy, providing whatever level of support you need, we're here to help. Like we've been talking throughout today's programming, the comprehensive portfolio we offer and unmatched flexibility means you can start out of the box to address your most critical issue and then expand, configure, connect processes over time. We'd love to work with you to help you build a business case for whatever stage you're in. And we have a very comprehensive ROI calculator that can help you clearly quantify the impact for all your stakeholders. And next slide, Tom. And kind of wrapping it up here. So we do bring over 30 years of experience doing this, serving over 600 customers and 1 million users across a broad range of industries. And we put all these best practices we've gathered into the Reliance platform so you can basically jumpstart your quality journey, and then ultimately we can all advance our practice of quality management. Okay, next slide, Tom. Just quickly before we jump into the Q&A, I wanted to draw your attention to the rest of our Quality Solutions series. We've had a few other webinars, and the link is there on the slide. We've talked about supply chain audits, new product introduction, training management, so a range of topics, and we'll continue to provide these sessions into the new year. Certainly, if you have any requests, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you what you would like to hear from us coming up. And with that, I think we'll jump into any questions we have. And there you go. Thank you. Not seeing anything.
Liz,
What's
are you
that,
with
Tom?
us there? Are you watching the questions? Looks like we have a couple coming in.
So Tom, what are the common kind of starting points for people beyond dock control? We talked about audits as well. What's another common attack point for the customers you've seen?
Yeah, so well, corrective action is really one of the most fundamental processes. You know, people sometimes come to us and say, I need a corrective action system or a corrective action process, but sometimes they don't realize that it's not just corrective action, it's really tracking of the issue, like we talked about in the process overview slide. So is it a customer complaint? Is it an audit finding? Is it what's leading to the corrective action? And just because it's an issue doesn't necessarily need the corrective action. Is everything worthy of a full corrective action? Think about the time and resources it takes to do full-blown corrective action. So you capture the issue, you can document, you know, your approval, your whatever related to that particular incident, and that's often sufficient. You maybe do a risk assessment, maybe you do an investigation as part of the quality event, and it's not worthy of a full corrective action. So, you know, it's really understanding that and starting with corrective action and then working your way back. Because as you showed on the journey slide a few minutes ago, you're not going to be able to install everything at once and run everything at once. You can implement it in steps or phases. And we have a lot of experience in working with customers to kind of help them with their journey, provide feedback, be a sounding board, kind of provide best practices experience for that.
Well, I think it's a bit of a quiet day out there. I think we have people thinking perhaps about their quality journey, how they can start mapping out these connections and working towards continuous improvement. And that's probably where most people struggle. It's
Yep, that's fine.
To bring it back, you know, to feed back into the system. It's easy to maybe set up a work instruction and just manage at the document level, but
there's a lot of information out there. You can see some of that on the page here. Please visit our website. Check out the webinar that Angela mentioned before. Reach out to us. We're certainly happy to help if we have one-on-one discussions with you as needed. I recognize some names on the list. Some of them are customers, some may not be. We really would look forward to to chatting with you and discussing how we can help you on your quality journey.
Thanks for joining today.